Hello, and welcome to the Say It Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Christine Daynard, and the goal of this podcast is to encourage you to live your best and most authentic life by digging deeper and finding connection through vulnerability. I believe we have been taught that vulnerability is a weakness, when in fact it is our superpower. In this space, I will share personal stories and conversations with others so you can be empowered by their strength and inspired to take action in your own life. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started. Well, hey, welcome back to the show. I am sitting in my reformed podcast studio. And if you've seen me on social media, you might know that this is now the third rendition of the I was going to say the hotspot, but it kind of feels like a hotspot, little like a hot potato actually. Because the spaces I was changing, and I realized something about myself as I was starting to record this podcast, is that I love to recreate my space. I get bored of the way my space is over time, and I like to refresh that space and move things around and purge things and do all the things. And I don't know why I love to do that. I just think I just love variety. I love change. And not always do I love change, but I really often embrace it or really feel compelled to shift around my environment a lot. And so this is now, like I was saying, the third rendition of the podcast studio. So when I first started the podcast, if you've been a listener for this long, you probably remember that the first several episodes, I actually went on the road and I either recorded the podcast right in my van, so in my Honda Odyssey that I still have from my boutique wine tour company that drove around many, many people in that van. And I took that van and I drove around and I went to go see people and we did podcast interviews either on site in their space, and I would set up equipment wherever we were, or right in the van, depending on where we were meeting. Like I remember meeting Erica from Bear and Fox, like in a parking lot between where she lives and where I live. Kind of sounds random, but anyway, she brought coffee. We chatted in the van. It was all good. But there was that beginning stage when I was still, kind of not even trying. I was just leaning into what felt good, right? I was not trying to put rules on myself or bind myself into something necessarily, but give myself space to breathe, give myself space to just, show up as I wanted to show up and just be myself and find out how that felt for me, how I liked doing different things. And the podcast came through really clearly for me that it was something that was going to be something I did. And like I said, that's how I started. And then eventually that kind of became no longer sustainable because I got a little bit busier and I started doing other things because I was trying out a lot of things. And I'm still doing a lot of those things, but I've also let things go. The things that weren't really working out for me, I let go. And the things that I really love to do now are still with me because I really, really enjoy them. And I don't know if you're one of these people too, but it's like, I think I spent so much of my life. Well, I know I spent so much of my life doing a lot of things because other people thought that I should do them, or other people suggested it was a good idea, or other people had their opinions, and we so easily get influenced. I'll say I was easily influenced, I guess, into, doing things that weren't necessarily what I really wanted to do, but I would get ideas from other people. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well maybe that sounds good. Oh, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then I found myself in several careers and miserable and trying to find my place in the world. And then really found my footing when I got into entrepreneurship and when I started my first company. And then when I closed the doors to that company at the end of 2022, I started, like I said, navigating different things. And this podcast was one of the first things that came up. And it's really opened doors for me. It's really allowed me to just, lean in and do the things that feel right for me. And I've really learned that I really, really show up when I use my voice. There's a lot of great things that come from inside of me, come from my experiences, come from, the wisdom that I have collected over the years that I've been alive. All the things that I have done and experienced, and the relationships I've had, and the people that have been in my life, and all of the things that have gone on in the last 48 years of my life. There's a lot in me. And so a podcast has been on my heart for a long time. And it was one of the first things, like I said, to come in. And then slowly realizing that, I really love to cheerlead people. I really love to encourage them. And as I started to lean into more of who I was and who I am authentically, and doing things that feel right for me instead of doing the things that no longer, fit for me, or maybe never fit for me. I just did because we were always doing the things that other people thought, right? It's like, what have we been doing all of our lives? Trying to fit in, right? And so it's been a really freeing experience. And now that I'm in the place that I'm in, and I've collected all these experiences for myself, and I'm doing the work that I do, I really love it. Number one, I love that I'm creating variety in my life. And clearly, as I was mentioning, having this podcast studio space changed now 3 times in the last year, that I really like variety. I like to change things up. I like to experience things in a different way. And honestly, I was saying in a little Insta reel that I was creating earlier, is that I would love to, travel the world and interview really interesting people and share that on the podcast. I think that would be really awesome. And I was saying that might be my retirement plan down the line, might be something that I do later in life. But right now I'm just going to put it on the board, and we'll see what comes of that. And, while I just even say that out loud, I just want to encourage you to keep dreaming. This conversation, actually, this whole podcast episode isn't even about the things I'm sharing right now, but I really wanted to just commit, as I'm talking about this, to share that, keep dreaming. Keep following what's in you. There's this heartbeat inside of you. There's this thing that is a part of you, and it's begging for you to look at it. And if you have ideas or things, or even crazy off the wall ideas, things you want to do, things you want to experience, things you want to try, lean in and try them, especially if they're things that keep coming back to you. That's how you know. It's like I get lots of ideas, and if I took action on every single idea that I had, oh my God, I would be changing things all the time. But not everything is an idea that's worth pursuing. But I find that for me, and maybe this could work for you as well, is that every time I have an idea, I kind of lock it away. And if I forget about it and never comes back, then it wasn't really meant for me to move forward with, right? It's like, if it wasn't like a visceral, full body yes for me in the moment, then it probably just wasn't for me. But when I have these ideas that just keep coming back to me, and my body's like, hello, like tap on the shoulder, when are you going to do this? Then those are the things that keep coming back to me. And interestingly enough, all the things that kept coming back to me are a big part of what I do today, which is, one, use my voice, talk out loud, share my experiences, help other people, right? Be a helper, and support people and cheerlead people, and be for other people what I could never find for me. Like I went through so much change in my life, and I was often, the oddball out. I didn't do things like other people did them. I don't and didn't ever, I think, speak a language that a lot of people spoke. And so I really found myself pretty isolated and alone a lot. And especially, when you're the oddball out and you just want to fit in, like you're trying all these different things and nothing's working for you. And you have nobody around you to say, hey, did you know that if you just followed what was in you, really magical things would happen? Like, gosh, I keep dreaming of, wishing that was possible for me, but I can't go backwards, right? None of us can go backwards. I can only go forwards. And so while I, sit with the things that feel really good, a big part of that is, like I say, guiding people to listen to their inner compass, listen to what's inside of them, listen to that direction that's coming from within them to just do what's on their heart to do. Because, we're not here for a long time. Somehow we feel like we're invincible while we're living, but we're not. And there eventually is an expiry date, and we don't get to know when that is. We don't have any idea when that's coming. And so, it's like we are here to experience. We are here to live and here to enjoy and here to have fun. And somehow, life got all serious and everything got in the way, telling us that we had to follow all these rules and we had to do all these things. And it's making most of us miserable. And I just knew that there was another way to do things. And I'm so glad that I fell into following, my inner compass, my intuition, into doing more of what's right for me. And like I said, as a result, helping other people find what's right for them. And, what's right for one person isn't right for another. And that's okay, right? Like, we're built different. I always talk about how we're different snowflakes and we do things differently. And that should be encouraged, not discouraged like it's been. So I really, really, the more and more that I lean into this, the more I just want to show up for people and encourage them to do what's on their heart, and be that person in their back pocket who is reminding them of what they're made of, and that if their dream is for them, then it's for them. And it's for them to pursue. If they feel it and it's in them, and they feel a drive and an interest in pursuing it, then that really is for them. And, I think we've had it wrong for a really long time, in that, it's like, pick one thing and just do it. So many of us are not built that way. And, I think I know I have faced a lot of resistance in my life as a result of not being a person who could just sit still and do the same thing all the time, and this experience and rearranging and changing my podcast recording space is, at 48 years old, is just another example of, me not liking things the same all the time, right? Certain things stay, but they shift in how they're done. So I'm still hosting a podcast over a year later, but I'm doing it a little differently, or the place that I'm doing it is different. And that's okay. Because I'm following what's right for me. Right. And I really want to create good content for the people who are listening. I really want to create something that's relatable and that I have the energy to put into it. And, I started doing a podcast every week, and then decided to move to every couple weeks, because I just couldn't keep up with the demand I was putting on myself. And I realized, well, geez, if it's my podcast and it's me producing it and me putting all the energy into it, and it's like my big passion project that I love to do, but I really have to have the energy to do it and the interest and the drive to do it, then I really needed to give myself a little more time. So I feel like this is a really long intro to the podcast. Hi, welcome back, by the way, or welcome to the podcast if this is the first time that you're here. I really just want to encourage people to do what's on their heart to do. And this podcast is one of those places that I have conversations, and I of course share some of my stories, and I share from my heart in some of these solo episodes, but I also, invite people to come in, majority women, to come in and have conversation with me, to chat with me about, what they're doing, what's happened to them, or what's happened for them in their life, and how they're moving through it, and how they're finding their purpose through challenge, or how they're finding through things that were really hard for them, and maybe even bad things that have happened to them, that they're really finding themselves after having those experiences. And sometimes we have to have those experiences in order to realize what life is for us, right? And so it's been a really, really amazing ride. And, I was actually looking at this episode as sort of like a touch base and a catch up session, because, last month, March, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's almost like, as I record this episode, literally it's the night before it's going out. So this is April 30th. Tomorrow is May 1st when this episode comes out. And I have not posted an episode in a little over a month. So I'm a little behind. And a lot of the reason I'm behind is not because I didn't have intention to come in and record episodes or even have some great conversations that I can post. It's that when I was a big part of that Bloom event that happened on March 23rd. And we'd been leading up to this event. Me and a few friends co-hosted this incredible, oh my God, it was like such a big warm hug. And for any of you who are listening, who are at the event, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you were there and that you chose to be there. It was such an incredible day. And we poured our hearts into that event and really created a safe space for women to share and be vulnerable and find themselves in other people, right? Like see themselves in other people and realize that they're not alone in their experience. And that by sharing our story and getting a little bit vulnerable in safe places, when it's safe, like I say, for us to do that, really amazing conversations happen and really amazing movements start to happen in our lives when we can be in spaces like that. And it was really cool to be a part of that experience experience. And, leading into that event, of course, there was lots going on in my world. There was lots of planning for that event happening. I think it took us about 10 months to come together and bring all the details to life for that event. And of course, those last few weeks leading into the event, there's always those last minute things or those little details or those the stuff that just keeps you busy in those last few weeks before your event. And so my plate has been very full. And I found that as soon as I got out of the Bloom event and as soon as it was over, first of all, it felt like a flash in the pan. The event went by so fast, and it almost feels like it was a dream, a really incredible, amazing, curated, incredible day of a dream. And, but it went by so quick. And, I think it took me several days after the event to just kind of sit in it, right? To just kind of relish in this incredible experience that we got to create for women in our community, and how great they felt in it, how much they felt seen, how they felt heard, how they felt connected, and how, they left that room changed women for the better. And that feels really good, for somebody who wants to encourage people to show up as more of who they are and lean into more of doing what is on their heart to do. That event was a big heart fart. I say that all the time, that I have heart farts, and that's what that event was. It was such a huge heart fart. And anyways, as I was saying, it took me a little while to come down from the event, to sit in the glory of that day, to actually kind of pinch myself a little bit and realize that, oh my God, like I did that thing, right? We did that thing. And I don't even think I felt like I was living in real life, like that my feet were planted on the ground for at least 2 weeks. And it's sort of surreal and sort of hard to put into words, and it's really hard to explain. But I think when you do something really big like that, something that is so profound and so impactful, it really just shakes you to your core. It really reminds you of the reason that you're here. And it reminds you of the reason why you started doing that thing in the first place. And gosh, it was amazing. And I will maybe not completely continue to gush in your ear for this whole episode, but once I finally got my feet on the ground and started kind of getting back into work and catching up on other things that had sort of, had to sit on the sidelines for a little bit while I, put all my energy into that event, the podcast was something that naturally kind of fell off for me for a couple weeks. Well, really, I guess 4 or 5 weeks, because I just didn't have the space for it. And I think that one of the things that we don't really give ourselves room for in our lives is flexibility. Is, yes, we can make promises, and yes, we commit to doing these things. Like for me, the podcast is really important. And I love that people continue to come back and listen, and that they're looking for this episode every other Wednesday. But sometimes if it means that I'm going to break for me to put out an episode, then I'm going to choose me. I'm not going to break. I'm going to put myself on pause for a minute, and I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that I don't break. And then I will come back and I will get back into the rhythm of doing the things that I was doing. And I think that's so important. And it's been such a lesson for me. I did a talk today in a corporate team building event virtually. And I was telling them about how I have now had, I'm on my now 4th career in my adult life, and something that was sort of like looked down on and something that was discouraged is to do a variety of different things in your life. You're supposed to pick that one thing and do that one thing. And I was reminiscing about how in my first 3 careers, I was in sales and sales management, and I burnt out from that. And then I got into public relations and communications, and I burnt out from that. And then I opened my own business and somehow survived a pandemic, and I burnt out from that. And I was telling them that I connected all the dots and realized that the connector in that, the reason I was suffering from burnout all 3 times wasn't necessarily because all those jobs were so much, well, that's debatable to some degree, but like I put myself so far into all of my roles. I gave all of myself to what I did for work and didn't do a lot outside of the work to fill my own cup, to fuel and play and have fun, to make time for myself, to escape and spend time with friends and do the things that were important to me to fill my cup back up, that all three of those times, my cup ended up getting so empty, and it wasn't sustainable what I was doing, any one of those three careers. And as much as I enjoyed the variety of the careers that I've had, I've learned a lot in everything that I've done. And although they're very different, there's also a lot of connection between them. And I don't think that I could have done one without the other. Like each one was a stepping stone to the next thing. But in that experience, I had to realize that I was the common denominator, right? I was the common denominator of the burnout. So it was in career 1, 2, and career 3 that I suffered from burnout. And what's really interesting is that when I was leaving my corporate career, after about 6 years of being in that particular career, I started my own business. And somehow I thought that if I ran my own business and I could do things my way, that I wouldn't run into this. Like the reason was external for me, right? Like the reason was because there were all of these outside pressures and there were all these things that I had to do and I felt like I had to keep up. So yeah, part of it was, social pressure, work environment pressure. The role in leadership in those places was to hustle and grind and go, 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 go. Like my own manager didn't take breaks. My own manager didn't take lunches. Like the culture was to immerse yourself in your work. And so it was certainly influenced around me. There's no question. It was a big part. It's a big part of our culture to hustle and push our limits and just keep going. Like I can't even count the number of times, because it was so many, how many times I went to work sick in my careers, When I think about that, it's like, how many times have you gone to work with a cold or, really sore throat, or like maybe the leftovers of a flu because you just had to get back to work. And, the pandemic sort of shifted some of that stuff for us in the sense that, we now have sort of been given permission to get well before we go back to work. So like one of the maybe several silver linings of the pandemic is that it taught us to, or encouraged us to like kind of, take care of ourselves before we go back to work. But like that has not been in our culture, right? It's been in our culture to just keep pushing the limits. And I had never learned, never understood, never knew that self-care was a thing. Like for me, self-care was like having a wine night with my girlfriends. And not to say that that isn't self-care. So if that's self-care for you and you're listening to this, like, yeah, okay, that can be self-care. But that was the limit of my self-care. Right? Like that was what I was doing. And then I got really back into, my fitness and health and wellness. And so I was working out every day and then having like a wine night a week, let's say, with my friends. So those are my 2 self-care items. And I didn't really know that there was much more available out there for me until I started to look, because as I shared with this group today in our call, that I realized that I was the one who suffered from burnout 3 different times. And the one thing that I could change was how I was operating in that space, how I was bringing myself to the table, how I was, following along with this idea and this concept that we just push ourselves into the ground and we grind so hard that we put everything out there and then we got nothing left for us. And somewhere in that, I realized that I couldn't do that anymore. I actually don't know if I would survive another case of burnout. And so now through that experience and through some of the other updates I'm going to share with you in just a couple minutes, it's like I experienced this burnout and I experienced this really hard time. And I realized that if I couldn't just slow down, if I couldn't just take time for me, if I was always doing all the things because the expectation from everything around me was that I had to continue doing all of those things, that I would just now be putting myself right back into the same place, just in a different environment, just doing a different career. And I'd be doing the same thing to myself and pushing myself into the ground again. And I promised myself I wasn't going to do that. I promised myself I was going to, like I said, shift the narrative, do things that are different. And I started seeking out a different way of being. And over the course of the last couple of years, I've discovered that. And I'm not fully discovered it, of course, because I know I'll continue to uncover more and I'll continue to evolve as a human and I'll continue to grow and go through my personal growth spurts. Yeah, that's what I call them. And, but for now, like my tool belt of self-care is so much more involved than it was ever, because again, I did wine nights and I worked out, right? Those were my two elements, which were honestly, in their own rights, were amazing things for me. I kept my body in shape. I helped probably reduce a lot of stress in my body just by working out every day. And by spending that time with friends and having that wine night, I was able to let off some steam. But I didn't realize at the time, which I now have kind of come to terms with, that, my nervous system was pretty dysregulated. And I've learned since that a lot of our bodies are really dysregulated and that our nervous systems are still basically living in the past. Our nervous systems are a culmination of all of the things that have happened to us, all the experiences that are the energy of them is living in our body. And when you really start to dissect that, and I won't get too far into that today, it's maybe a conversation for another day, but once you really look at how our energy impacts us and how that energy gets stored in our body, it creates a surge of this energy in our bodies, and we actually don't know how to shut it off. And so the only way to do it is to actually slow down. The only way to do it is to take better care of ourselves in the ways that helps to, put our nervous system at ease, which has a lot to do with breathing, has a lot to do with having quiet time, has a lot to do with dreaming, has a lot to do with unplugging from all the things, like literal technology unplugging, but also just unplugging from the normal daily things that you do, because, we're always just plugged in. We're always on. We're always doing everything. And so when our bodies are constantly in that, whether it's our mind or whether it's our body that's going through the experience, all that energy is stored. And when we take big, deep breaths and we learn how to breathe properly, which I learned that most of us are we're breathing really shallow. We're breathing right up in our chest cavity, but we're not really fully breathing into our bellies. We're not getting full breath. So our brain isn't getting enough oxygen. Our body isn't getting enough oxygen, and we're not de-stressing our body the way that we could be if we were paying better attention. Instead, we're just often focused. I'll say me, I was often focused on what the next thing was. What's the next target? What's the next goal? What's the next achievement? What am I going for here? Never sitting still. And, I really learned that I had to take time for me. And that time for me has turned into, sometimes I do still move my body. I do more walking than I do anything right now, which I'm hoping to make a real big shift in that in the near future here for myself. But also doing daily meditation, doing somatic meditations, and doing different breathing techniques to help relax my body, to help ease the tension, and to do things to release the energy in my body, not just the energy of today, not just in the things that have happened today, but in the things that have happened in, the last 40 years of my life. And because all that stuff is stored. And when I started to do some of those things, I really started to notice a huge relief. And so now, as I have sort of come up for air, so to speak, and have promised myself I'm not going to go into burnout again, those things have become really, really important to me. And, I know when I've gone a few days and I'm starting to kind of just get a little wiry, or, things just aren't settling in, I know that I haven't taken that time for myself. If I can't settle, if I'm not sleeping well at night, or if I find myself, binge eating something in the evenings, or, just eating mindlessly, or different things like that, those are my triggers now. Now I know that those are the things that are reminding me, hey, tap, tap on the shoulder. What have you done for you today, Christine? What have you done for you? And so now I primarily, and try most days, I get it most days, not every day, but most days I start my day with a meditation, and I start my day just taking some time for me, getting quiet with myself. And then at the end of my meditation, I dream. I dream about, the things that I'm doing now. I dream about the things that I want to do coming soon. I dream about what could be far off in the future. I dream about things that might never happen. But, I feel like if we don't dream, we don't put out into the world or into the universe or into ourselves what could be possible for us. And we just stay in the now, which being present is good. So don't confuse that. But really, I guess what I'm saying is I'm taking that time for me to just do what I need to do for me that makes me feel good. by breathing, by meditating, by dreaming and, staying in the present, but dreaming of what could be in the future, envisioning what could be possible. And, finding that gratitude in every day, finding something to live for, something that's good in every day, even if the day feels bad. And all of those things, I'm just talking off the cuff here because I didn't really make a plan to come in here to talk to you. And I guess I don't really ever make plans to come in here and talk to you, but it's that I am throwing maybe a few things at you here, but through my experience, ultimately have just realized that for me, slowing down, making less promises, following my body. And when it's feeling off, like doing something to bring myself back into my body, like that breathing and that meditation and taking care of me. And it's really made a huge shift in my life. And I think too, like just more recently, in fact, the last episode I dropped, I talked about a recent health scare that I had, and I found out just before Christmas that I have a fatty liver, and I had no idea that it was there. I found out because I went to my doctor and was asking him if he could help me get some ADHD meds to help me focus better, because it's something that I had thought I'd experienced all my life, and I was really experiencing or really resonating with a lot of the symptoms that people were talking about who had ADHD. And I have known for a long time that I was sort of somewhere on that spectrum. I just, it wasn't evaluated. It wasn't confirmed. It wasn't, I wasn't told this is your diagnosis. So maybe I felt like I didn't have any footing, but went to him and said, hey, like, I don't know if it's possible for me to go on ADHD meds or something, but I know that I resonate with this. I know that I'm somewhere on the spectrum, and I really need some support because I can't do a lot of the important things I want to do because I'm really struggling with my focus. And maybe you can feel that in some of my podcast episodes, but he basically told me that he couldn't just issue me something, which is probably a good thing, right? There's like some safety measures in place, and that he sent me for an EKG to make sure my heart was doing well. And he sent me for some blood tests to just make sure that my body was functioning well before they, issue you a stimulant. It's protocol. I don't know if this is a new thing or it's been around for a while. Apparently it's been around for a while, where they just want to make sure that if they're going to give your body a stimulant, that your body can handle it, right? That your body knows what to do with it, or it can handle it when you give it to it, so that you can not have a heart attack or, something worse. So in that process of getting an EKG and having my blood work done, they found that I had enzymes in my liver that were heightened. And, he's like, they're just heightened a little and I'm not too concerned, but I'd like to take another look just to be sure that, we don't have anything to be concerned about. And I went in for an ultrasound and more blood work, and they found out that I have, in fact, a fatty liver. And through this process, which, first of all, I never would have known I had a fatty liver if I hadn't gone through that process, right? If I hadn't gone and finally asked for something I've been wanting to ask for like 3 years, or if I didn't go to my doctor and just express what was going on with me and have him go through some kind of test to be able to take me to the next step, I never would have known that this was a thing. And as I described in the last podcast episode, I have learned that a fatty liver doesn't really have any symptoms. Like, they're so easy to pass by. They're so easy to miss because, there are things like you might have some indigestion, or you might get like a really bloated belly a lot of the time and pass it off as indigestion or pass it off as food sensitivities, which my list of food sensitivities had been increasing and increasing over time. And I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And really, most of the symptoms about a fatty liver don't come up until much later down the line, when it's really serious and you can't do much about it anymore, is usually when you actually start to get physical indicators that there's a problem. So I feel really grateful and really lucky that I opened my mouth and I asked for what I wanted, which led me to go and getting testing, right, before being issued anything first. And I also had to go to a psychiatrist to be sure that I was on this list of symptoms and that I was in line with the ADHD, sort of like diagnosis, before he could issue me any medication. And which, P.S., this is for another whole other story. In fact, I talked in the last episode about I'd really love to bring in a few people who are, professionals in these industries who can talk to me about, being a perimenopausal woman, being a perimenopausal woman with ADHD, being somebody who hasn't been diagnosed with their ADHD until they were an adult and has been masking all of their symptoms for like most of their life. And also, just being a woman and how the whole science community or the whole research community often does a lot of the research on men, and women are really kind of overlooked in a lot of areas. And I'd really love to talk to people and learn more about, why this is going on and what we can do to improve it and how we can help each other sort of, learn about what's going on and understand our bodies better and know what to look out for. Because gosh, like if I had kept going right down this line that I was going on, who knows where that would have taken me. And what's kind of, I won't say crazy, but what seems kind of off the wall is that since I have been talking about the fact that I have been diagnosed with a fatty liver, I've had so many people share with me that they too found out that they had a fatty liver. I was talking to one girl I know that she has had a fatty liver when they noticed it when she was 20 years old, because their family just never ate really well, and they were never, eating from like they weren't eating a lot of vegetables or, fruits and like a lot of whole foods. They were eating a lot of packaged foods. So when she was 20, she found out she had a fatty liver. One of my other followers on Instagram, we were chatting and she was telling me that she found out recently she has liver cancer, and she never knew that she had anything going on. She never saw any symptoms. She had no idea that it was happening until it was diagnosed. And so now she's been going through treatment and she's doing okay, but it's been a ride for her. And then I've talked to all these other people in between who have had these experiences that are somewhere in the spectrum of that experience. And most of them had no idea. And most of them, from what I could tell in our conversations, found out as a result of getting tested for something else. So it kind of makes me ask the question, well, why aren't we being notified of this? Why don't we know to start looking for fatty liver? Because if it goes from just being a fatty liver and it turns into fatty liver disease, which turns into, or you get liver of cancer of the liver. Oh my gosh, can't talk right now. If I get liver of the cancer, oh my God, I said it again. You know what I'm trying to say. That once I am veering into that area, I have a less greater chance of being able to recover, letting my liver fully recover from that. And if this is going on, how come no one's talking about it? Right? So ultimately what I'm trying to say is that, when we don't know what to look for, we just don't know. And a lot of us sit around and we're pretty ignorant to what's going on in our bodies, and we're not taking care of ourselves, and we're living in this like hustle culture, and we're doing all these things because we feel like we have to, and we're experiencing all this stress in our lives, and then we're finding coping mechanisms to manage our stress and to feel better, and to, often many of us are wondering like, where is the happiness? Where is the joy? How come I'm not living this life that I love? When I was a kid, I couldn't wait to be a grown up. I couldn't wait to have, money and disposable income to be able to do whatever I wanted. And now all I do is work and stress and live in this place that's not a whole lot of fun. And, all of these things combined that I'm sharing with you today, it's like, I know for me, it's like that I got to this point where I was like, I really need to change something about what's going on here, because it can't be good when your body basically, and if you don't know a whole lot about burnout, like once you get to burnout, nothing works properly, right? Like your digestive system starts to shut down because your body is basically not performing at its best. And so it shuts things down, including your digestive system, to help your major functions work, like to keep your heart beating and to keep things moving. And so your body is just not operating at optimum, and you don't feel like doing anything, and you don't have energy for anything. And, it's a really dark place to end up. And if you're in that space right now, gosh, like, first of all, I want to say like, I feel you, and I know you're in a hard place. And if you feel yourself kind of really going downhill, and You're nodding your head as I'm saying these things, like we're living these stressful, constant workaholic type of lives. And you're feeling that in your life too. Like it might be time for a shift for you as well. It's like we're human. We're not designed to be doing all the things and pushing our bodies all the time. Like we were designed to have seasons, just like the weather has seasons, just like a tree grows leaves and is beautiful and gets all green and lush and full, right? And then it has times where all of a sudden all those leaves fall off and it sits bare and it's kind of in hibernation for a period of time. And it's in rest until the spring comes again and the thaw happens and the leaves start to grow and it starts to, right? So like we are just like nature in the sense that we have seasons. But the thing is, we're ignoring our seasons. We're ignoring this time of rest. I will certainly say for myself, I was ignoring the seasons and time for rest. And as it comes up, it's like, and as I'm talking through in this episode, maybe it feels like I'm kind of jumping around all over the place a little bit. But ultimately, when we don't take care of ourselves, our bodies stop working well. And at some point, we have to make a decision like, what am I going to do differently? What different action can I take? Because I'm just running an autopilot. And if I keep going at this pace, I'm not going to survive much longer. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, been looking around, but like people are dying a lot earlier in their lives than they were before. And stress is so incredibly impactful on our body. And I know this is not my, this is not my expertise. I'm not an expert in this. I am not a doctor, a scientist, a researcher, but I know my personal experience and I know how I have felt in those experiences. And, I think our body can only take so much before it just kind of like caps out on us and says like, you know what, I've been giving you all these warning signals all along and you haven't been paying attention. And it's up to us to pay attention. So I think where I was going with this was to say, I first, after working those 3 careers and experiencing burnout, started to shift the narrative for myself, wanting to do things and live a life that had more breath in it. Had more time for fun in it, had more time for me to relax in it and not be hustling all the time because I wasn't doing a good job surviving in the hustling. Well, that's literally what I was doing was survival. I was surviving, but I wasn't thriving. And I would be so bold as to say, I think a lot of us are not thriving. A lot of us are just simply surviving. And I think that there's just so much more to life. And as I shifted that narrative and started, going down this path and building a better life for myself and something that felt more authentic to me and something that felt really good for me and trying out different things that brought me joy and allowed me to, relish in who I am and like have variety and do different things and connect with people and have fun. Like those are really important things to me. And my life has changed a lot. And then when I got that diagnosis just before Christmas about having a fatty liver, like I was like, holy moly, it really had me sit down and go like, imagine if I, first of all, hadn't even gone to the doctor, but imagine if I hadn't even started weaning myself out of burnout and deciding to choose to do life differently. Because the more I read about the fatty liver, the more I realize that all of these things are connected, right? How stressed we are, how much we push our limits, how much our capacity our body has and our mind has to keep going, what systems in our bodies shut down and come alive at different times of our life when we're in or not in so much stress, and all of this pressure on our bodies that we have never as humankind, I don't think ever put this much pressure, this much hustle, into what we're doing. And our bodies are they're reaching a breaking point. And so in December, when I learned this about this fatty liver, I was like, okay, you know what? Like, that's it. Like, that's the icing on the cake. My body's been telling me for a while that it wasn't doing awesome, right? Like, I went through burnout. I had all these experiences. I had no energy, like all these things, like all the signals were there. It's like flags are flying all around me. And I'm like choosing to ignore them until I could no longer ignore them. And now that I I'm sitting with this, fatty liver diagnosis, I have really been taking my health a lot more seriously. So I'd already started doing things like, the breath work and the meditation and the yoga and taking care of myself and building in breaks and not pushing myself when my body said no, right? Having this 4 or 5 week time lapse in podcast episodes because my body just wasn't up for the challenge. My body just wasn't up for it because I had other things going on. I had a full plate. And my body is like, now my body and my mind are working together to say, okay, Christine, it's time to take a time out. And so I took that time out and shifting some of my habits as far as like how I was eating and the times of day I was eating and, the alcohol I was consuming and the types of food I was consuming. Like I have made a lot of shifts in that area because I'm like, you know what? I don't want this thing to take me out. I don't want stress and what I haven't enjoyed about my life be what takes me out. Do you hear me on that? It's like, I don't want to go out because I pushed my body too hard. I want to go out knowing that I lived a life that I really loved and that I had a lot of fun and that I did a lot of things that came up in my heart that I really wanted to do and I went after them and I did them in a way that felt good for me and that I think a lot of us could really use this support. I think a lot of us could really use a reminder that we don't have forever, And so ultimately I came in today to do a bit of an update, which has now been, like I said, it may feel like it's a little all over the place here, but ultimately, it's recognizing when we've got so much going on, when we need to take breaks, to start listening to our bodies. And, like I'm throwing out Mayday, like if you have been feeling sluggish and maybe you're not taking great care of yourself, like go and get yourself tested, go and get your blood tested. That's how they found out that I had a fatty liver and that's how they'll find out for you too. And at least when we know, we can do something about it, right? Instead of just ignoring it. And so that's what I've chosen to do for me. And this whole last couple of years, I guess, has really been not only a personal self-discovery for me, but also like a health discovery or a health rediscovery. I used to take much better care of myself, funny enough, when I was younger. And as I got older, I let the stress happen. I let this hustle sit in and I let all of this goal of achievement kind of rush in and take over. And those are the things that have actually been my demise. Those are the things that have really, at the end of the day, forcibly slowed me down because I couldn't keep going through them because my body was saying no. And I've finally started to listen. So, I'd really just wanted to share an update that, from the last episode, I mentioned that I went to get a liver scan to find out, like what level or where I was at in the fatty liver sort of scale. And great news is that I'm at the very beginning. So I'm not of high concern at all. I'm at the very, beginning stages of a fatty liver, which it still isn't great, but it's good in the sense that I caught it so early. And when you catch the liver in a place where it's fatty, but it's still pliable, you can actually reverse all the damage by treating your body better and having less stress in your life and fueling yourself with better foods and, reducing or eliminating alcohol and doing all these different things that I am now currently doing, because I see value in living a longer and healthier and an active life. And so I wanted to share with you that I'm okay. And that I'm doing all the right things to move it in the other direction. I'm shifting the trajectory of this outcome because I found out about it and I can do something about it when I find out about it, right? So I just want to encourage all of you, this was kind of like a lot of things in one episode and a lot of things maybe for you to think about if this has not been, topics or things that you have, had conversations about. And again, and maybe you don't know because maybe this is the first episode you've ever listened to, but this is the place where we say it out loud. This is a place where I or me and other people talk about things out loud that people aren't talking about. And I seldom hear people talking about the things that I'm sharing here or that we are sharing here. And so I think that, I don't say it to be an alarmist, but I say it to, give us kind of like a little, what's between a red flag and a green flag? A green flag is good news. Red flag is bad news. Well, I guess that would be a yellow flag. This is your yellow flag, right? It's like, if you're feeling these things and you're noting that, you're kind of nodding your head along to a lot of the things that I've said today, maybe it's time for you too. Maybe it's time for you to start doing things a little bit differently so that you can take better care of yourself and live a better life and do more of what's on your heart to do and have the energy and the, audacity to go after it. And, I love coming in here and chatting with you. I am sorry that it's taken me a few weeks to get back in here and to share more episodes with you. But I hope that you'll hear me when I say, when we recognize what we have capacity for, sometimes that capacity isn't worth pushing past. In fact, I would say probably a lot of the time that capacity is not worth pushing past if it means that our health is going to be on the line, And so I'm honoring me. And I hope that as I talk about learning to honor myself and learning to discover myself and now helping other people to, feel supported in learning about themselves and diving deeper into who they really are and how they are and the little habits and the things that they can change about the way that they've been living because they haven't been living a great or fun or fulfilling life, that they can start to shift those things. And, I'm doing it. I've been doing it for me for a while. Now I'm leaning in to support other people to do the same thing if that's something that they're interested in. And, I just want to encourage you to take better care of you. And hey, at the end of the day, if you're looking for a personal cheerleader, if you want somebody in your corner who's, going to be there to remind you of all the great that you are and that it's worth doing things differently because they feel better for you and they feel better in your body and you're more fulfilled and living a more joyful life, then let's connect. There are many ways that I can support you and help you through one-to-one coaching or through the Joy Project community where I host women in a community there, through, coming and being a podcast guest and let's talking it out and share and talk about what you've been experiencing or what you're going through and how you're getting to the other side. There's lots of different ways that I'm here to support you or here to connect. So I would love to hear from you. And ultimately I want the best for you. And we only got one shot, right? We only get one shot to live this life. Why not make it the best that we can possibly make it? And I think a lot of us have just given up. I think I gave up for a while too. It's like everything feels sometimes so hard and it feels impossible to keep going. And you know what? Yeah. When we're not taking care of us, this is what I've learned. When I'm not taking care of me, and I'm not doing the things for my body, mind, and soul that support me in living my best life, I won't be living my best life. And that's really what I'm here to encourage you to do. So until next time, thank you for coming and listening. Thank you for being here at the podcast and share this episode. Share the podcast with other people who you feel would really resonate with the content here. And I really look forward to seeing you the next time. I've got some really great episodes coming up. I've had some really great, interesting conversations and guests come in and chat with me. And I can't wait for you to hear some of those conversations. And let's pick up this ball and keep it rolling. Every 2 weeks, a podcast episode drops. And you know that if there's a miss, and if I'm missing an episode, it's because I am leading by example by leaning into myself. And if it's not possible for me to do it as a one-woman show who's doing all the things that I'm doing at the stage of the business and game that I'm at right now, then that's okay. That's for me to choose. And putting me first is a green flag. That's a green flag. It's a good thing. So I'll leave you with that. I'll see you next time. And until then, have a great time. Go be joyful. Go live life. Go have fun and lean into more fulfillment. We'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode. I'd like to invite you to hit the follow button on this podcast so you'll be notified when the next one drops. And if you liked this episode, please leave a review, as it will help others to find this message. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at It's Me, Christine D. Or if you'd like to connect about being a guest on the show, ask me about group or one-on-one joy and mindset coaching, learn more about the Joy Project community, or consider hiring me for your next speaking engagement, please visit itsmechristined.ca. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.